Let's get one thing straight, right now. If you're still hovering over your phone, wondering whether you should send that one last message, stop. Breathe. Because everything you think will fix this situation, explaining more, checking in, offering another ounce of yourself, is the exact thing that's keeping you stuck. You think they'll finally understand your worth if you phrase it just right? That if they see how much you care, they'll come back with clarity and respect? That's a lie you've been told by the hopeful part of your mind that hates uncertainty. But let me ask you, has chasing ever brought you peace? Has over-communicating ever earned you the kind of connection you truly crave? Or has it left you drained, questioning your value, wondering if you're just too much for the wrong person? See, the truth isn't dramatic. It's not complicated. And it's definitely not emotional. It's calm. Stoicism teaches us that when people truly value something, they move toward it. They don't leave it doubting itself. They don't treat it like an option. So here's the bold truth you need to hear. If they wanted to talk to you, they would have. Period. But I get it. Your heart wants closure. Your mind wants a reason. So you keep telling yourself stories. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they just need time. You've given them your patience, your vulnerability, your understanding, over and over again. And now? You're still here, watching the read receipts, second-guessing your worth. This ends today. Not with a dramatic exit. Not with a social media stunt. But with one quiet, powerful shift they'll never see coming. This is not a video about playing games. This is about reclaiming your center. You're not here to beg. You're here to become. You don't need to text them again. You need to do this one little thing. A move so subtle, so strategic, so stoic, it will imprint on their mind in ways your words never could. This isn't just a reaction to their silence. It's a redirection of your entire energy. A transformation. And it begins now. This is for those of you ready to stop hurting and start glowing. Ready to evolve so fast they won't even recognize you. Because if you stay until the end of this, I promise you, you'll not only understand the power of detachment, but how to use it like a sharpened sword, cutting through every illusion they built about you. By the final seconds, you won't just know what to do, you'll feel it in your bones. And trust me, they will too. So don't blink. Don't scroll. You're about to uncover the art of Stoic relationships in a way no one ever taught you before. Let's begin. 1. The energy switch from pursuer to prize. They never thought you'd stop chasing. Let that land. They never imagined a version of you that no longer sends double texts, no longer opens old message threads hoping for a sign, no longer walks on eggshells to keep the connection from crumbling. Because for so long, you were the pursuer, the hopeful one, the giver of second chances, third explanations, fourth emotional lifelines. You were the one waiting, patiently, painfully, for the person who kept you in limbo to finally wake up and value your presence. You became fluent in excusing their inconsistency. You learned how to interpret silence as potential, coldness as fear, breadcrumbs as affection. But here's the pivot, something inside you shifted. Subtly at first. Like the moment you stare at a closed door and realize you're the only one knocking. Then deeper. A crack opened inside your spirit and asked, what if I stopped reaching? What if I became the one they had to earn back? And that's when the power begins. Not with noise. Not with confrontation. But with stillness. A calm, centered withdrawal of your energy, your urgency, your predictable presence. That's the energy switch. When your light no longer chases someone who dimmed it. When your value is no longer something to be proven, but something to be felt in your absence. It's not passive. It's precise. It's not about indifference. It's about sacred self-respect. Think about it. How many times have you taught someone that your love is unconditional, but in a way that left you depleted? How many times have you rescued a dynamic that never deserved resuscitation? That ends here. Because you, my friend, are not an emotional savior. You are the prize. Not in a prideful way. Not in a manipulative way. in a Stoic way. In a way that says, I know who I am now, and I no longer negotiate my worth to fit inside someone else's indecision. That clarity creates dissonance for them. Suddenly, the person who always showed up first is missing from the script. The emotional safety net they depended on is no longer there to cushion their inconsistency. You've interrupted the pattern, and their mind is racing. This isn't about revenge. It's about energetic alignment. Because the longer you pursued, the more they believed they were the prize. The one with the power. But now the roles have reversed. Not because you screamed. Not because you explained. But because you silently reclaimed your self-respect. It's fascinating what happens when you stop offering instant access to your heart. The same people who took you for granted start questioning their choices. The silence becomes a mirror. They see the reflection of what they once dismissed, and it unsettles them. Why? Because you were reliable. You were consistent. You were emotionally available. And now? You're gone. Not blocked. Not bitter. Just elevated. And elevation is louder than any goodbye. This is the Stoicism of modern love. Where you don't chase closure, you embody it. Where your silence isn't absence, its presence redefined. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the very ambiguity they once fed you. Because here's the paradox. When you stop moving toward them, they feel the gravitational void. The space your energy used to fill now echoes with questions they can't answer. And that's how you teach someone your worth, without saying a word. This shift isn't temporary. It's not a tactic. It's a transformation. You're stepping out of the archetype they once placed you in. You're no longer the forgiver on demand, the emotional firefighter, the fallback plan. You're no longer writing paragraphs to justify your pain to someone who never read your silence. You've become a new archetype, the one who chooses peace over proof, presence over pursuit. And they don't know what to do with that. Because they were never prepared to lose the version of you that made loving them so easy. And now, they're not just losing you. They're losing the power they thought they had over your emotional state. You've broken the emotional contract. And when you do that, the whole foundation of their control crumbles. But here's the most beautiful part. You're not doing this to get them back. You're doing it because you finally see what you bring to the table. Your energy is rare. Your love is not a clearance item. You no longer invest in people who treat consistency like a luxury. This is Stoic relationships in action, not built on emotion, but on value, clarity, and direction. You become the one who no longer sends the "just checking in" text. The one who no longer waits for validation. The one who no longer lowers their frequency to remain accessible to someone who never tuned into your spirit in the first place. And when they reach for the version of you they once knew, they'll realize it's gone. Not hidden. Gone. Replaced by someone glowing so bright in silence, they can't look away. That's the paradox of transformation. They see it, but they can't touch it. And the more they try to re-engage you with their old behavior, the more they realize the game changed. You don't respond to breadcrumbs anymore. You don't translate mixed signals anymore. You're not playing the same role in their life story. Because you're writing your own now. And every word of it echoes with a new frequency: power, clarity, peace. You've become emotionally fluent in boundaries. You've mastered the art of staying centered when everything in you wants to explain. That is the highest form of emotional control. That is Stoicism in motion. And that calm, quiet refusal to chase? That's the fire they feel in their chest at 2 a.m. when their mind replays your absence like a loop. That's the loop they can't close. Because you're no longer predictable. You're no longer reachable on demand. You're not there to help them avoid their own discomfort anymore. You were the medicine they didn't appreciate until the symptoms came back. And now they want the cure, but the pharmacy has evolved. You're not cold. You're composed. You're not angry. You're aligned. And in that stillness, you've become a force. Not the kind that pleads, but the kind that commands respect without raising a voice. This is your new identity, not a reaction to their rejection, but a revelation of your rebirth. This isn't you proving anything to them. This is you living in the proof of who you've become. And that version of you? That's the one they'll chase in memories they can't rewrite. So hold this energy like armor. Let it guide your every move. You're not here to be pursued for validation. You're here to become so deeply rooted in your value that the only people who reach you are those who recognize it from the start. That's the switch. That's the moment you stop being the one who texts first and become the one who doesn't need to text at all. Because the message has already been delivered, in your energy, your silence, your evolution. And when they feel the absence of that, it's not just silence. It's consequence. That's how Stoic relationships operate. That's the shift. You don't need to send the text. You just need to become the version of you who never had to. 2. Controlled exposure, the psychological hook. They thought you vanished. They assumed your silence meant absence. But here's what they didn't realize: you didn't disappear, you became deliberate. That's the difference. You didn't retreat in defeat, you repositioned yourself with precision. And that, my friends, is where the psychological reversal begins. This isn't about ghosting. This isn't about playing petty games. This is about understanding the ancient Stoic principle that true strength lies in restraint, not reaction. Controlled exposure is the quiet discipline of being seen without being accessible. It's showing up in the world just enough to trigger their memory, but never enough to satisfy their ego. It's psychological warfare at its most elegant. They thought you'd either beg or vanish. But you've done neither. You've mastered the middle. You've become a riddle wrapped in presence. Not loud. Not thirsty. Just undeniable. Imagine this: they open their feed, and there you are, not trying, not flaunting, not provoking. Just existing in a glow so real it disorients them. A single picture. A subtle moment of joy. You're laughing, you're focused, you're radiant. And it's not for them, but they feel it anyway. Because your energy used to be theirs. And now? Now it's global. It's free. It's no longer wrapped around their inconsistent attention. That right there is the hook. Controlled exposure is about planting seeds of confusion in a garden they once thought they owned. It's about disrupting the story they tell themselves. They convinced their ego that you'd be waiting. They predicted your every move, the late-night message, the attempt to fix things, the need to be seen. But you didn't play your part. You shifted the frequency. Now every time they see you, or hear about you, it stings. Not because you're showing off, but because they no longer have access. This isn't about vengeance. This is about perception management. It's about Stoicism in action. You no longer speak your worth. You live it. You no longer explain your pain. You transmute it into progress. They thought they'd hear from you. Instead, they hear about you. And that third-party awareness? That's what twists the knife. Your existence becomes a narrative they're no longer part of, but can't stop watching. It's no longer we. It's them and the world. And your world is moving fast. You show up in places they didn't expect. You rise in ways they never imagined. And the best part? You do it without saying a word. That's the genius of controlled exposure. It plays on the most vulnerable part of the human psyche, the fear of being replaced, the fear of becoming irrelevant. You don't attack their self-esteem. You simply elevate beyond it. And that elevation echoes in their subconscious like a haunting. Why do they seem so calm? Who's that in the background? Are they over me? The questions multiply. And in the absence of answers, their mind fills in the blanks with scenarios far more painful than anything you could have said. The same brain that once ignored your texts is now obsessed with your silence. That's not revenge. That's reality folding back on itself. Because when you stop chasing, you force them to sit in the aftermath of their choices. Stoic relationships aren't built on performance. They're built on presence. And you've now become a presence they can't engage with. You're no longer just a person, you've become a symbol. Of self-respect. Of resilience. Of quiet evolution. And that symbol now lives rent-free in their mind, activated by anything remotely resembling you. A song lyric, a location, a laugh, a shadow. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to stop. That's the power of not reacting. You interrupt their comfort, their certainty. You shatter the predictable rhythm of you being available. And in that space, their anxiety grows. This is where Stoicism and modern psychology merge. Because when someone expects your energy, and you don't deliver it, they enter a loop. Carl Jung called it projection. What they refuse to see in themselves, they project onto you. So now, every part of your transformation becomes a trigger. They blame you. They fantasize about you. They stalk you. Not out of love, but out of discomfort. Your glow isn't validation, it's punishment. But not the kind you inflict, the kind they inflict on themselves. Because your presence no longer includes them. You see, they were banking on the old you. The one who apologized first. The one who reached out after a fight. The one who posted things just to be noticed. But that version of you? Gone. Replaced by someone too focused on peace to perform. Too busy with growth to give updates. That's what makes controlled exposure so unsettling. It whispers instead of shouts. It appears without explanation. It lives in their world without ever answering their questions. And the mind? It hates unanswered questions. It will circle them like prey, looking for meaning. Meanwhile, you're not even watching. You're not curating your life to be seen. You're just becoming, and they can't handle that. Because the truth is, people don't miss the noise. They miss the connection. And when you once gave them access to your soul, your attention, your thoughts, and now give them nothing? That lack becomes a vacuum. One that pulls on their insecurities, their doubts, their hidden regrets. They scroll, hoping for signs. They listen for rumors. They wait for you to slip up, to fall back, to reach out. But you don't. Because you've mastered restraint. You've embraced Stoic discipline. You've redefined what power looks like, not in presence, but in selectivity. Not in being seen, but in being unforgettable. That's the paradox they now live with. The more they try to decode your silence, the louder it becomes. You don't need a caption. Your energy says it all. You don't need to block them. Your indifference blocks everything. And this is where they crumble, not publicly, but internally. You're not making noise. But you've become the sound they hear when it's quiet. Every glimpse of you now opens an emotional loop they can't close. Every time your name pops up, there's a pang of something they don't have a label for. It's not heartbreak, it's realization. That's how Stoicism flips the script. It doesn't attack. It reveals. You're not hiding. You're healing. You're not avoiding. You're evolving. And that evolution now exists like a ghost they can't outrun. Controlled exposure is a mirror. It shows them who they are in the light of who you've become. And if they don't like what they see, that's not your problem anymore. You're not performing for their recognition. You're too busy building a reality they no longer qualify for. And that, my friends, is the psychological hook. It's not a post. It's not a look. It's a presence. One they can't access but can unfeel. So if you're sitting in that stillness now, owning your space, living your truth, letting your growth speak, then congratulations. You've mastered the art of becoming unmissable by becoming unavailable. That's not game. That's growth. That's not revenge. That's redirection. That's not silence. That's your spirit echoing in the places they once took for granted. Now it's your turn. If this is the shift you're stepping into, I want you to mark this moment. Like this video right now and comment number 1 if this part hit your soul. And don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next? It's going to transform how you navigate every Stoic relationship in your life. 3. The art of the unreachable glow. They never expected you to evolve. They expected you to recover, maybe, but not to ascend. They thought time would dull your intensity, maybe soften the corners of your spirit, but they didn't anticipate a transformation so potent that it rewrote your entire presence. This, right here, is the glow they can't process, the glow that isn't curated, isn't performative, and isn't about them at all. It's the unreachable glow. The kind of radiance that doesn't beg to be seen, but once it appears, no one can unsee it. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about drawing attention. It's about what happens when you build yourself from the inside out. When you take everything you gave away, your time, your forgiveness, your vulnerability, and you reinvest it into your healing, your peace, your power. And the result? A glow so profound, so grounded, so quietly disruptive that it becomes sacred. You're not just glowing in your skin, you're glowing in your decisions. You're no longer apologizing for your presence, no longer shrinking to fit into smaller stories. You've outgrown the role they cast you in, and now they're watching a version of you they can't place, can't name, can't hold. And it bothers them. Not because you're shining, but because they never imagined your light could thrive without their spark. That's what makes it unreachable. Because it wasn't built for them. It wasn't built in response to their rejection. It was built in the aftermath of you choosing yourself. This is what Stoicism looks like in its rawest, most radiant form. Not reactive, but elevated. Not noisy, but undeniable. You're no longer looking for closure, you've become it. You're no longer looking to prove your worth, you embody it. Your glow isn't just energy. It's consequence. It's the result of every day you didn't fall apart. Every day you woke up and chose to be better, not bitter. It's spiritual resilience, alchemized from heartbreak. And they see it. Oh, they see it. In the way you walk now, with intent. In the way you speak, with less hesitation, more authority. In the way you take up space, not arrogantly, but with grounded certainty. You are no longer afraid of being too much, too loud, too real. You're not dimming your light for anyone. And that's what makes it unreachable. Because the version of you they had access to? That version was still asking for crumbs. Still hoping. Still stretching yourself to be chosen. But this version? This version doesn't chase. This version creates. She builds. He moves forward. Not in rebellion, but in remembrance. Remembering who you were before they doubted you. Before you doubted yourself. And now that you've reconnected with that truth, nothing they say or do can distort your reflection. They try, of course. They'll minimize your glow. They'll say you've changed. That you're distant. That you're acting brand new. And you are. Because you've done the work. You've earned your distance. You've earned your evolution. This isn't a phase. This is a frequency they can no longer reach. And every time they see you, online, in person, in conversation, what they're really witnessing is the gap between who you were and who you've become. That gap is where the ache lives. That gap is where the regret begins. Because they were there when you were giving, open, available. And they mistook your softness for permanence. They thought you'd always be there. But now they see, your glow has boundaries. Your time has terms. Your love has grown teeth. And it doesn't show up where it's not valued. That's what separates the authentic from the attention seekers. You're not glowing to be noticed. You're glowing because your inner world is aligned. Because your rituals, your choices, your silence, they all echo the same thing, peace. And peace is not loud. It's not dramatic. But it is powerful. It commands the room differently. And when they see you, unbothered and unrecognizable, something inside them stirs. It's not just jealousy, it's existential discomfort. Because they thought they were the main character in your story. But now, they're a subplot. A lesson. A footnote in the autobiography of someone who chose growth over grief. This is what happens when you stop orbiting other people's gravity and create your own. Your glow isn't for likes. It's not an aesthetic. It's a discipline. And every day you maintain it, every time you don't text, every time you don't explain, you add more shine. And it builds. Silently. Until one day, they can't deny it anymore. You've become the one who got away, not because they lost you, but because you outgrew them. Because you stopped asking to be chosen and started choosing yourself. Because you stopped trying to make them feel comfortable and started making yourself powerful. And that's what creates the phantom tension every time they see your name. It's not that you're out of reach. It's that you no longer reach for them. And that reversal of energy is the glow they can't unfeel. This is Stoic Relationships in motion. Where healing isn't reactive, it's ritual. Where your upgrade isn't for display, it's for survival. They didn't think you'd rise. They thought you'd wait. They thought the pain would paralyze you. But it built you. And now, your glow is untouchable. Not because you're hiding, but because not everyone gets access to your rebirth. That's what makes it holy. That's what makes it unreachable. Because the old you would have posted for their attention. The new you posts because you're creating something real. The old you needed their validation. The new you is already fulfilled. The old you was starving for closeness. The new you is feasting on clarity. And it shows. In the way you dress. The way you speak. The people you keep around. You've curated your life like a temple. And not everyone gets in. Especially not those who made you question your glow in the first place. This isn't arrogance. It's accountability. You're holding yourself to a higher standard. Because now you know what you bring. You know the value of your consistency. You know the power of your love. And you don't give that power to people who use it carelessly. This is the reward of restraint. This is the echo of your discipline. You've shown the universe what you're willing to lose in order to find yourself. And it responded by making you unforgettable. That's the thing about becoming. It always demands a cost. You paid with your old identity. With your need to be liked. With your habit of over-explaining. And now, you're walking in your new skin. They don't recognize you, not because you're fake, but because you're finally real. Finally aligned. Finally whole. That's what scares them. That's what keeps them watching. Because deep down, they know, you were the real thing. You were the miracle they mishandled. And now, you're not bitter. You're just gone. But your glow remains. Untouchable. Unforgettable. Unmistakable. 4. Jung's emotional imprint theory. There's a truth about human nature that most people miss, a truth Carl Jung exposed with brutal clarity. We are not driven by what we understand. We are driven by what we have not yet integrated. And when someone creates an emotional wound without offering closure, without providing meaning, the result is not detachment, it is obsession. Not because we want them, but because our minds cannot categorize what they became. You, in this story, were the consistent one. The available one. The giver. The emotionally honest presence who showed up without pretense. And they, whether through immaturity, fear, arrogance, or pure selfishness, responded not with gratitude, but with confusion, withdrawal, mixed signals. They created an emotional contract, and then broke it without explanation. And in doing so, they left you with questions. Questions that kept looping in your mind, kept replaying through old messages, kept waking you up at night. What went wrong? Was I too much? Did they ever really care? That's the emotional imprint. It's not about the person, it's about the gap. The gap between what you expected and what you received. And the irony is, while you were wrestling with those questions, trying to heal, trying to find answers, they felt nothing. They moved on with the confidence of someone who didn't realize a storm was coming. Because emotional imprinting doesn't strike immediately. It waits. It waits for the silence to settle. For the mind to calm. For the distractions to run dry. And then it moves in, quietly, surgically. They see a color that reminds them of your smile. A place that echoes your laugh. A post that hints at your presence. And suddenly, the brain, a machine built for pattern recognition, panics. Because the pattern is broken. You no longer exist where they placed you. You've become a paradox. A symbol of both love and consequence. And this is where Jung's theory becomes reality. The subconscious begins to rebel. It doesn't like loose ends. It doesn't tolerate ambiguity. And so it searches for meaning in your absence. It creates fantasies, projections, imagined conversations. You didn't have to do anything. The imprint has already been made. That's the power you didn't even know you had. The moment you stopped reacting. The moment you stopped texting. The moment you didn't respond to their breadcrumb message with another open door. That was the trigger. The dissonance begins. Their brain says, I know this person. They always come back. But reality no longer agrees. You've changed. You've redirected. And now the mind loops. Over and over, it replays what happened, trying to understand where it lost control. It's not guilt, it's confusion. And confusion, when unresolved, becomes fixation. That's what imprinting does. It doesn't require drama. It requires disruption. And you've disrupted their expectation of you so completely, so quietly, that they can't unfeel the shift. You were supposed to be there. You were supposed to respond. But now, you're a ghost in their reality. Not haunting out of vengeance, but existing as a consequence. They look at others, hoping to replicate what you gave so effortlessly. But they can't. Because you were real. You were rare. And now, you're unreachable. And every time they try to mirror your glow in someone new, they fail. Because emotional imprinting isn't about memories, it's about energy. It's about the feeling they had when you were present. And now that you're not, they realize how loud your silence can be. Stoic relationships operate on this principle. We do not chase love, we become it. And in becoming it, we leave behind a legacy in others. Not always in words, not always in gratitude, but in echo. You are now the echo. The metaphor they hear in every sad song. The face they see in unexpected dreams. You are not there, but they feel you anyway. Because you were never just a person, you were an experience. You touched something in them they didn't know how to handle. And now they feel that absence like a burn. Not immediately, but gradually. That's what makes imprinting different from nostalgia. Nostalgia fades. Imprinting lingers. And it always strikes when the noise dies down. This is the trap they walked into. Thinking you'd always be available. That you'd wait. That you'd eventually break and reach out. But you didn't. And now, every day that passes without your energy, they sink deeper into that loop. Wondering. Guessing. Projecting. Because you've become the unknown. And humans fear what they can't define. That's the core of Jung's wisdom. What we fail to understand, we're forced to feel. And they feel you now. Not through presence, but through loss. Not through contact, but through reflection. You broke their archetype. They labeled you as the giver, the chaser, the one who would always come back. And now, that label no longer fits. And when a label doesn't fit, the mind spirals. That's where obsession begins, not because they love you, but because they can't explain why you're gone. And when the mind can't explain something, it repeats it. That's how emotional imprinting becomes psychological gravity. You are now the weight they can't lift. The lesson they can't unlearn. And here's what's wild, they'll never admit this. They'll act like they're fine. Like they've moved on. Like you were just another person. But their subconscious will scream otherwise. It will replay your name in their mind when they least expect it. In the quiet moments. In the in-between hours. When no one else is watching. Because that's when the truth visits. When the masks are off. When the distractions end. When their new relationships feel too shallow. When the new connections lack depth. That's when they remember you. And not because they want to. Because they have to. Because your energy still lives in their nervous system. That's the imprint. And no amount of pretending can erase it. You've marked their story with your truth. With your consistency. With your love. With your elevation. And that mark cannot be replaced. It can only be remembered. You've become the reference point. The measure. The ghost standard. And every person they meet after you, they'll be compared. Silently. Subconsciously. Unfairly. But relentlessly. That's not your fault. That's the cost of being unforgettable. And if you're walking this path now, if you've felt that fire of silence becoming presence, of calm becoming power, then you know, you don't need to text. You don't need to remind them. You don't need to prove anything. Because the imprint has already been made. Their mind is doing the work for you. That's the beauty of Stoicism. You don't act out. You act within. And your within is now so aligned, so sacred, that they can't touch it. They can only remember it. So if this part resonates with you, if you felt that emotional echo in your chest, like you finally understand how powerful your absence can be, then you're exactly where you need to be. Go ahead and like this video right now if it spoke to your spirit, and drop a comment with number 1 if this piece felt personal. And don't forget to subscribe, because this journey through Stoic relationships is far from over, and trust me, what's coming next will shift your entire understanding of power and connection. 5. Ritualized self-elevation they can't unsee. Let's talk about something they never expected, the daily, deliberate evolution of the version of you they once dismissed. They thought you'd stay emotionally curled up, waiting, scrolling through memories, stuck in the trauma of what if? But instead, you chose a different path. You ritualized your rise. And that right there is where the game ended, not with a final message, not with a dramatic farewell, but with the quiet consistency of you choosing yourself over and over again. You stopped watching them. You stopped measuring your worth by their responses. You stopped hoping they'd suddenly wake up and validate what you've always known to be true. Instead, you began rebuilding, not as a trend, not as a revenge glow-up, but as a commitment to your future self. This is where Stoicism meets reality. Because every time you replace reaction with routine, every time you turn pain into structure, every time you wake up and choose progress over pity, you are writing a new narrative. And trust me, they can see it. It's in your posture, in your clarity, in the way you speak with more intention. You've become someone who is not moved by chaos, not triggered by silence, not drawn to confusion. You've become grounded. And that grounding is terrifying to those who once controlled your emotions with a simple text. You used to respond instantly. Now you pause. You used to over-explain. Now you say less. You used to crave connection. Now you honor alignment. Your discipline has become your declaration. Your growth has become their lesson. And the best part? You're not doing it to be seen, but you can't help being noticed. Because real elevation glows. It's not flashy. It's undeniable. And while they're out there trying to recreate your energy with filters, distractions, and replacements, you're building something real. You're building a version of yourself that lives in clarity, that thrives in solitude, that attracts through frequency, not force. This kind of elevation is rare because it's not motivated by spite. It's built from truth. And that truth is this: you never needed them to become who you were meant to be. You just needed the space they left behind to rediscover your power. And now that you've tapped into it, there's no going back. This is your ritual. This is your new normal. And every habit you cultivate, every boundary you uphold, every limit you raise, it's all a message. Not to them, but to the universe. You're not here to be broken again. You're not here to be almost loved. You're not here to dim your light so someone else can feel less insecure. You're here to lead, to heal, to shine, to embody. This is why they can't look away. Because the version of you they see now, it's not performing, it's becoming. And that becoming is so magnetic, so piercing, so unfiltered that it cuts through every illusion they held about you. They thought they knew your limits. They thought they understood your depth. But you've outgrown the emotional architecture they built in their mind. And now, they don't recognize you. Not because you're faking it, but because you've finally become the version of yourself that was buried under their confusion. And the thing about rising is this: it doesn't always feel powerful at first. Some days, it feels like dragging your soul out of bed, forcing yourself to journal, meditating through tears, eating better when all you want is comfort. But every act of self-respect, no matter how small, compounds. Every choice you make in favor of healing builds a foundation that no breakup, no rejection, no ghosting can shake. And over time, those habits create something beautiful, a life that no longer needs explanation, a presence that no longer seeks permission. You become whole. And wholeness is loud, even in silence. Especially in silence. Because people feel when you're no longer emotionally accessible. They sense it in your glow. They hear it in your laughter. They read it in your eyes. You are not seeking. You are being. And that beingness becomes a mirror for them. It reflects what they missed. It reflects what they mishandled. It reflects what they will never be allowed to touch again. This is the paradox of Stoic relationships. You give freely, but you also walk away fully. And when you walk, you do not look back, not because you're heartless, but because you've found your center. And that center has become your sanctuary. You wake up now and your phone is not your prison. Your thoughts are not your enemy. Your past is not your identity. You've ritualized your rebirth. You've turned your healing into a habit. And every time you honor that, you become less reachable by those who only saw you as a convenience. They will try eventually. They will circle back. But by then, it won't be about whether they deserve another chance. It will be about whether they can even recognize the person you've become. Because your evolution will speak a language they never learned to read: integrity, accountability, emotional maturity. They will not understand the peace you now carry. They will not know how to hold the boundaries you've built. And that misunderstanding will be their punishment. Not because you wanted them to hurt, but because they chose not to grow when you did. You do not need to prove anything to them. You do not need to showcase your progress. Because real transformation is felt, not flaunted. It leaves traces in the atmosphere. It becomes a legacy, a vibration, a shift. And that shift echoes long after the connection ends. It becomes the silent authority that enters every room before you do. That's what they feel now. That's what makes them uncomfortable. Because they had access to you when you were soft, scared, hopeful. And now, you're sovereign. And sovereignty cannot be begged for. It must be earned. You've done the work. You've invested the time. You've walked through fire and came out luminous. That kind of growth? It's not a phase. It's a standard. And anyone who enters your life from now on must meet it. That's how you honor your own story. That's how you stop betraying yourself for proximity. That's how you rewrite the script. You are not who you were. You are not waiting for the past to make sense. You are living in the present, building something irreversible. And that's what they'll never unsee. No matter how far they run. No matter how much they deny it. Your rise will haunt them, not because you made it so, but because they never imagined it was possible without them. And now they know. Now the truth is clear. You were never the problem. You were the lesson. And the more they pretend they don't see you, the more their subconscious reminds them of what they lost. And you don't chase that recognition anymore. You wake up, you elevate, you repeat. That's your ritual. That's your glow. That's your story now. 6. The phantom effect when absence becomes presence. You didn't text back. You didn't explain. You didn't chase, beg, or try to clarify what they were too careless to protect. You simply stepped back, disappeared into your own silence, and from that moment on, something began to haunt them. Not you, not your words, not your memories exactly, but your energy. That's the phantom effect. When your absence begins to echo louder than your presence ever did. This is not about ego. This is not about making them suffer. This is about understanding the fundamental law of emotional dynamics. People do not value what is constantly available, but the second that access disappears, they begin to feel the void. And not just once. Not just in moments of nostalgia. They feel it in patterns. In fragments. In repetition. Your name becomes a whisper in rooms you've never entered. Your laughter becomes a memory they hear in someone else's joke. Your silence becomes a soundtrack that plays in the background of every conversation they have with someone who doesn't get them like you did. And the most chilling part? They never see it coming. Because when they walked away, they assumed that was the end. But what they didn't account for was the impression you made, not just in their day-to-day, but in their psyche. You were not just love. You were safety. You were presence. You were real in a way they were not ready to handle. So when you finally left, fully, stoically, without the need to announce it, your absence became the teacher. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And now, they're resisting the truth. They're pretending they've moved on. Pretending they feel nothing. Pretending you were a chapter. But their mind is stuck in a loop. A psychological loop they don't understand. Because you were supposed to reach out. You were supposed to slip. You were supposed to still care. And yet you didn't. You didn't come back. You didn't react. You became a mystery. A loose end. An unclosed tab in the browser of their mind. And that's where obsession begins, not because they love you, but because they can't define you anymore. The version of you they controlled? Gone. The version of you that overextended, overexplained, overcared? Gone. You've upgraded in silence, and silence is the most terrifying sound to those who rely on attention. So now, everywhere they go, they carry pieces of you. Not because you're desperate to be remembered, but because your impact was never about noise, it was about depth. And depth, once experienced, cannot be replaced by shallow substitutes. They can date. They can scroll. They can post. But nothing touches the part of them that you once reached. Because your connection wasn't performative, it was present. And they took that presence for granted. And now, they feel it slipping, fading, stretching into a version of you they no longer recognize. That version lives on, not as a fantasy, but as a reminder. You've become the metaphor in their late-night thoughts. The what if that stings more than a breakup. Because breakups end things. But your energy? It never left. It simply stopped being available. That distinction is what makes the phantom effect real. You are not trying to haunt them. You are not playing games. You are just existing in truth. And that truth lingers. It touches their playlists. It colors their dreams. It shows up in reflections they can't explain. They deleted the messages, but not the impact. They muted you, but not the echo. Because your evolution, your silent, disciplined, unapologetic transformation, has become a trigger. They remember you in moments they wish they didn't. When they hear your name in passing. When they visit a place you loved. When someone new says something that doesn't quite measure up. That's the phantom effect. They let go of you thinking they could replace you, but what they actually did was set you free to become unforgettable. And you did. Not because you tried, but because you stopped trying. You didn't need to perform grief. You turned grief into growth. You didn't need to show the world how strong you are. You became strong in the quiet. That strength? That's what they feel now. Not your need. Not your apology. Not your love. But your strength. And that strength shows up in their mind like a ghost that doesn't ask to be seen, it just is. Stoicism teaches us that true power is internal. It's not about controlling others, it's about controlling yourself. You've done that. You've mastered the art of letting go without needing applause. You've mastered the ability to move forward without leaving digital breadcrumbs. You are not broadcasting your progress. You're just living it. And that life you're building now? It's built on solid ground. Ritual. Reflection. Self-respect. And they can't stop wondering how you did it. How you moved on. How you became so untouchable. They check your stories, hoping for clues. They revisit old texts, looking for signs they missed. But all they find is silence. And silence, when paired with evolution, becomes deafening. You didn't ghost them. You grew. And growth has a frequency. It hums. It vibrates. It speaks to the soul in a way words can't. That's what they feel. And that's what they can unfeel. You became the echo, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. You had to rise. You had to detach. You had to protect your energy. And in doing so, you became unforgettable. Not because you left a scar, but because you left a standard. And no matter how hard they try, No one else fits that mold. That is the true phantom effect. You exist in their psyche now. Not as pain, not as drama, but as a moment they can't rewrite. And as long as they avoid their own healing, they will continue to relive you in fragments, in shadows, in metaphors. So if this part of your journey has resonated with you, if you're starting to feel the power of your absence speaking louder than your presence ever did, then this is your confirmation. Like this video right now and comment number 1 if you felt that. And make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next in this journey through Stoic relationships will take you even deeper into your healing, your elevation, and your transformation. You've come this far, and that alone speaks volumes, not just about your curiosity, but about your readiness. Readiness to stop settling for dynamics that confuse your spirit. Readiness to stop romanticizing potential over proof. Readiness to stop writing paragraphs to people who don't even read your presence. What you've just walked through is not a game plan for manipulation. It's not a strategy to make someone crawl back. It's a revelation. A deep, stoic unraveling of who you were when you gave your energy without asking questions, and who you are now that you've finally started to ask the most important one. What does it cost me to keep waiting for someone who made a decision not to choose me? That question is a door. And if you're brave enough to walk through it, everything changes. Because you begin to realize the chase was never really about them. It was about a story inside of you that believed love must be earned through proving, fixing, sacrificing. But not anymore. Now you see the truth. Love that demands you shrink, doubt, or explain yourself is not love, it's a transaction rooted in fear. And you're no longer available for fear-based connection. You're available for alignment, for presence, for mutual clarity. That's why all of this matters, not because they're watching, but because you are. Your future self is watching the decisions you make today. Your healed self is waiting on the other side of this silence, on the other side of this detachment, on the other side of this glow-up. And that version of you? That version is not impressed by how many likes you get, how quickly you move on, or how loudly you flex your independence. That version only cares about one thing: truth. Did you live in it? Did you stand in it? Did you honor it when it felt lonely, when it felt invisible, when it felt like no one understood? Because those moments, those quiet, unseen battles, are where your new identity is forged. You don't become powerful by pretending you don't care. You become powerful by caring deeply about the right things. About your peace, your integrity, your consistency. That's the heartbeat of Stoicism. It's not about emotional detachment, it's about emotional discipline. The ability to feel everything without letting those feelings dictate who you become. And now you know, your next move is not about reaching back. It's about rising forward. No more checking their stories. No more rereading messages. No more wondering if you should have said something different. You said what you said. You gave what you gave. And now your silence is the final statement. Not as punishment, but as proof that you've learned. Proof that you've outgrown the need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Proof that your energy is no longer available for people who only show up when they're bored, lonely, or feeling nostalgic. You are no longer available for uncertainty. You are no longer subscribing to relationships that require you to suffer first, prove later, and heal alone. You are here now, not to chase, but to attract. Not to beg, but to embody. Not to explain, but to become. That's what this whole journey has been about. About reclaiming your timeline. About stepping off the emotional hamster wheel. About seeing yourself so clearly that no amount of rejection can blur your reflection again. The person you're becoming does not need to convince anyone to stay. They do not fear walking away from lukewarm love. They do not pause their glow for people who only appreciate warmth once it's gone. They keep becoming. And that becoming will disrupt others. It will trigger old flames, confuse people who once had emotional control over you, and challenge friends who were only comfortable with the version of you that needed saving. But that's okay. Your growth is not a betrayal. It's a boundary. And your glow is not a warning. It's a witness. To every moment you chose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, self-respect over short-term validation. That glow is not for show. It's for survival. Because now, you're no longer chasing a person. You're chasing the life you were always meant to build. A life where your standards protect you, where your silence empowers you, and where your presence heals everyone you choose to share it with. And as you walk into that life, remember this: they walked away thinking you'd wait. But when they look back, they won't see the person they left behind. They'll see a stranger, a higher version, a sharper vision, a person who turned heartbreak into a harvest, silence into a signal, and detachment into divine timing. You didn't become colder, you became clearer. You didn't become bitter, you became better. And you didn't disappear, you evolved. That is your legacy now. Not just that you loved deeply, but that you learned. Not just that you gave freely, but that you grew fiercely. You are the lesson they never saw coming. The transformation they didn't believe was possible. And now that it's real, it's permanent. You are no longer the page they keep turning back to. You are the book they'll never finish. Because some stories aren't meant to end with closure. Some stories end with becoming. You are the one who didn't send the final text, because you didn't need to. You were the final message. And that message lives on, not in their inbox, but in their mind. Not in their conversations, but in their questions. You don't chase closure anymore. You became it. You don't chase peace. You generate it. And you don't beg to be seen. You became the standard no one forgets. That, my friend, is what Stoic relationships are made of: unshakable clarity, unexplainable growth, and undeniable transformation.